They didn't break them with pain. They tried something worse. Silence, distance, and the slow poison of believing no one was coming. The enemy didn't understand one thing. Snipers live in waiting, and waiting is where plans are born. Everyone in the teams knew the names, even if they pretended they didn't. Ethan, Hollow, Ross, and Mara, Vesper, Kincaid weren't the kind of legends recruiters put on posters. They didn't take photos. They didn't give speeches. If you asked them about their shots, they'd shrug and change the subject like it was weather. But operators talked. They talked about impossible wind reads, about targets dropped without collateral, about the way those two could disappear into a landscape and make an entire area feel haunted. A sniper's legend isn't built on kills. It's built on control. And Hollow and Vesper controlled chaos the way some people controlled breath. That's why the mission should have been routine. Routine, in their world, meant nothing went wrong because they didn't allow it to. They inserted in the dark, miles from the objective, using a narrow riverbed as cover. Above them, the valley was a black bowl. Ahead, an enemy logistics hub, an off-grid compound feeding weapons and cash to everything nasty within 200 miles, glowed faintly with generator light. Their tasking was simple. Confirm the HVT. Mark the transfer. Eliminate only if necessary. Exfil clean. Clean was a word commanders loved. Clean meant no questions later. Hollow moved first, low and silent, as if gravity didn't apply to him. Mara followed, her gear taped and muted, her rifle carried like an extension of her spine. She didn't waste energy, didn't waste motion. Even her breathing felt disciplined. At the overwatch point, a rocky shelf halfway up the ridge, they settled in without speaking. That was their language, minimal noise, maximum understanding. Hollow unfolded the spotter scope. Mara dialed wind. Their gloved fingers moved like they'd done this 1,000 times. Below, the compound looked calm. Too calm. Mara noticed it first. She always noticed first. She didn't point, didn't speak. She just froze, and Hollow felt it like a change in air pressure. He glanced sideways. "What?" he mouthed. Mara's eyes stayed on the valley. Then she whispered, barely audible, "No dogs." Hollow frowned. "So?" Mara's voice stayed calm. "They always have dogs." She was right. Logistics hubs love dogs. Cheap perimeter alarms. Reliable. Loud. Dogs were the first line of defense for people who didn't have surveillance tech. No dogs meant one of two things. They were overconfident, or they didn't need them. Hollow studied the compound again. Security patterns were too clean. Patrol intervals too uniform. Lights placed in deliberate corners, not random. He felt his stomach tighten. "Feels staged," he whispered. Mara nodded once. "Feels like they know someone's coming." Hollow's jaw tightened. "We weren't blown on insertion." Mara didn't argue. She didn't need to. She just watched. They waited. Minutes passed. Then the HVT arrived. A black SUV, unmarked, moving without headlights, escorted by two technicals. Men stepped out, weapons slung low, moving with that particular posture of fighters who'd been paid well enough to be confident. Hollow adjusted his scope. "That's him," he murmured. Mara verified through thermal. Confirmed. In their ear, the radio was silent except for the occasional breath of static. Their command element was listening. Hollow prepared the range solution. Mara kept eyes on the perimeter. A faint glint on the ridge opposite them caught Mara's eye. Not a reflection from their own glass. Opposite. A lens. Mara's hand tightened on her rifle. "Hollow," she whispered. "We're not alone." He didn't move his head. "Where?" 11 o'clock, High Ridge, she said. Optic glint. "Not ours." Hollow felt cold slide down his spine. "Sniper?" he asked. "Spotter," Mara replied. "Watching us." Hollow's thoughts snapped into clarity. They set a counter overwatch. Mara's voice was flat. "They baited us." The ridge went quiet. Then the first shot cracked, not at them, but close enough to explode stone near Hollow's elbow. A warning shot. Not to kill. To make them move. Hollow rolled immediately. Mara slid backward off the rock shelf, staying low. Another round hit where Mara's head had been seconds earlier. Whoever was shooting wasn't guessing. They were trained. Worse, there were two angles. Crossfire. Mara hissed. Two shooters. They mapped this ridge. Hollow's throat went dry. We need to break contact. Mara nodded. We can't go back the way we came. The third shot hit their exit path, throwing dirt and rock into the air. Then the valley below woke up. Floodlights snapped on. Not searching the compound. Searching the ridge. They were scanning for them. For the legends. For proof. Hollow keyed his mic. Actual. We're compromised. Counter snipers. We're disengaging. Static answered. Then a voice, not theirs, broke through the channel. Calm. Smiling. Hello, ghosts. Hollow froze. Mara's eyes sharpened. That voice wasn't militia. It was fluent, controlled, almost amused. Who is this? Hollow demanded. The voice chuckled softly. Someone who's been waiting to meet you. A sharp crack, another round. Hit close enough to spray Hollow's cheek with stone fragments. Mara grabbed his vest and pulled him down behind a rock outcrop, her movements fast and precise. Radio compromised, she hissed. They're in our net. Hollow nodded, teeth clenched. We're not getting out clean. Mara's eyes stayed cold. We get out alive. They moved. Not running. Running got you killed. They crawled, slid, and dropped into a narrow cut between rocks, using the terrain like a shield. Behind them, floodlights tracked. Above them, rounds snapped. And then, the ground beneath Mara shifted. A thin wire caught her boot. She froze. Her breath stopped. Hollow saw it too late. Don't move, he whispered. Mara's eyes flicked down. Tripwire. Pressure trap. No explosion yet. Just the click of a mechanism arming. The counter-snipers had done this before. They'd built a funnel. A capture net. Not a kill net. Mara moved her boot slowly backward with surgical precision, trying to relieve pressure. It almost worked. Then the wire snapped tight anyway, because it wasn't designed to be disarmed. It was designed to be triggered. A flashbang detonated behind them, light and pressure slamming into their senses. Their ears rang. Their vision flashed white. Hollow tried to move, but a figure slammed into him from the side. A hand on his rifle, a knee in his spine, zip ties biting into his wrists. Mara fought, harder than anyone expected, but another flash went off and the world tilted. Through ringing ears, Hollow heard the calm voice again, closer now. Easy, it said. We don't want to damage the merchandise. Hollow's jaw tightened. He spat dust. Go to hell. The voice chuckled. Already there. Come on. We've prepared a room for you. Hollow's eyes met Mara's through the haze. Even half-blind, even pinned, she was still calm. She mouthed one word. Breathe. Then the black hood dropped over Hollow's head, and the ridge went dark. The first thing Hollow understood when the hood came off was that they weren't in a cell. They were in a facility. Concrete walls, yes, but poured clean, reinforced, designed. No mildew. No random graffiti. No smell of rot. The air was filtered and cold enough to keep you alert. A faint hum lived in the walls like a heartbeat that wasn't yours. He blinked hard, eyes burning from the flashbang, and saw Mara chained to a steel ring bolted into the floor 3 meters away. Her wrists were cuffed, ankles cuffed, posture still somehow controlled. Her face was bruised, nothing dramatic, but enough to remind you the world had teeth. She met his gaze and did the smallest thing imaginable. She breathed in slowly, then out. A signal. Don't panic. Not yet. Hollow tried to sit up. Pain flared where zip ties had bitten his wrists. The cuffs were real now, metal, tight, professional. He tested them once, carefully, not to escape, just to learn. The ring didn't budge. The room had one door. Thick, reinforced. A camera in the corner. Another above the door. No window. Where are we? Hollow whispered. Mara's eyes flicked around the room again. She didn't answer immediately. Not a militia hole, she said finally. Too clean. Hollow swallowed. So who? The speaker in the ceiling crackled. Good morning, ghosts. That voice again. Calm. Fluent. Almost kind. In the way a shark might be kind if it wanted you to stop thrashing. Hollow looked up at the speaker. Show yourself. A laugh. Quiet, controlled. You don't get to make requests in this part of the story. Mara's eyes narrowed slightly. You planned this. Of course, the voice replied. You think legends happen by accident? You think people like you exist without drawing attention? Hollow felt his jaw tighten. Who are you? Another pause, like the voice enjoyed timing. Call me director, it said. Not because it's my rank. Because it's what I do. The door opened with a hiss of seals and pressure. Two men entered in dark gear. No patches, no flags, faces covered. Their movements were too smooth to be local. They carried tablets, not just rifles. A third figure followed. Unmasked. Mid-40s, clean-shaven. Eyes that looked like they'd forgotten what guilt felt like. Director. He stood near the center of the room at a safe distance, as if he respected them or simply respected danger. You're awake, he said. Hollow didn't reply. Mara did, voice low. Why aren't we dead? Director's mouth curved slightly. Because dead legends are useless. Alive legends are educational. Hollow's pulse steadied. You're testing something. Director nodded. That's a simple way to put it. Mara's eyes sharpened. For who? Director didn't answer directly. For the people who pay me to make sure problems stay contained. Hollow leaned forward. We're not a problem. Director looked at him like he was watching a child argue with weather. You're a variable, he said. And variables create unpredictable outcomes. Mara spoke again, calm and precise. You baited us with that meeting. Director smiled. We baited you with your own habits. Hollow felt cold settle in his stomach. Snipers, Director continued, are addicted to certainty. Angles, lines, clean shots. You believe you control chaos because you can see it from far away. He stepped slightly to the side, making sure he stayed out of easy lunge distance. But when you can't see, he said softly, you become like everyone else. Mara's voice was flat. You're wrong. Director's eyes flicked to her. Am I? He nodded to one of his men. The guard tapped a tablet. A screen on the wall turned on. Footage. Thermal imagery of their ridge insertion. Their movement. Their pause when Mara saw the optic glint. Then their capture. Flash. Rush. Restraints. Hollow felt something sharp in his chest. Not fear. Not yet. Anger. Because the footage had been recorded like a documentary. Like they were animals in a preserve. Director watched their faces as the footage played. You see, he asked gently. We didn't beat you by being better. We beat you by being prepared. Hollow's voice was low. You'll pay for this. Director shrugged slightly. Maybe. He leaned forward a fraction. But here's what you don't understand, Hollow. Your team is looking for you right now. Mara's eyes didn't change. Good. Director tapped the tablet again. The footage changed. A different feed. A small drone view over a valley. Seals moving through terrain, searching. Hollow's stomach clenched. Director smiled. They're motivated. I respect that. He tilted his head. How many wrong turns do you think they'll take before they realize they're not the only hunters? Hollow felt a spark of panic try to rise. Mara crushed it with one glance. She mouthed silently. Observe. Hollow exhaled slowly. Director stepped back. We're going to have a simple arrangement. You'll cooperate. You'll answer questions. You'll give us insight into how your unit operates. Hollow's eyes narrowed. And if we don't? Director's tone didn't change. Then I'll do what people like me do best. He looked at Mara. I'll separate you. That word hit like a knife. Separation. For a sniper pair, separation wasn't just loneliness. It was loss of the second brain, the shared vision, the calibration that kept you sane when the world turned strange. Mara's jaw tightened, just slightly. Director noticed. He smiled faintly. There it is. The weakness. Not fear of pain. Fear of being alone. Hollow's hands clenched. He forced himself to speak calmly. We're not giving you anything. Director nodded like he'd expected it. Then we'll start with something else. He turned and walked out. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. The guards remained. One placed a metal tray on the floor between them, Water, a piece of bread, a small packet of salt. Rations. Not kindness. Control. Then the guards left too. The room became quiet again. Too quiet. Hollow stared at Mara. They're messing with us. Mara nodded once. They're trying to. Hollow lowered his voice. They showed us our team. Mara's eyes stayed calm. They showed us what they want us to believe. Hollow frowned. You think it's fake? Mara took a slow breath. Maybe real. Maybe staged. Either way, it's a weapon. She shifted slightly, testing her cuffs with micro-movements. They want us to break by imagining failure. Hollow swallowed. So what do we do? Mara's eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then to the floor seams, then to the air vent. She didn't answer with hope. She answered with logic. We do what we've always done, she whispered. We map the environment. Hollow nodded slowly. They watch everything. Mara's mouth twitched faintly. Good. Then we learn their schedule. She stared at the door. Guards will enter. Same times. Same pattern. They can't help it. Hollow felt the familiar shift, the sniper brain waking up even in captivity. The mind that measured seconds and angles and human habits. First rule, Mara whispered. We don't waste energy. Hollow nodded. Second rule, she continued. We don't fight the cage. We learn the cage. Hollow glanced at the tray. They gave us salt. Mara's eyes narrowed. To keep us drinking. To keep us awake. To keep us thinking. Hollow exhaled. So we use it. Mara nodded. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. Not sleeping, not giving in. Just listening. In the distance, faint footsteps moved along a corridor. 2 sets. Then a pause. Shift change. Mara's lips barely moved. 4 guards. Rotating. 1 heavier gait. 1 limping. Hollow stared at her. You can hear that. Mara opened her eyes. I can hear intention. Hollow's voice dropped. And their mistake? Mara's gaze stayed fixed. Everyone makes one. The camera hummed quietly in the corner. They were being watched. But the watchers didn't understand the danger of leaving 2 snipers alive together. Because snipers could turn waiting into a weapon. And 2 snipers? 2 snipers could turn a prison into a map. Far away, in the dust and heat of a different valley, SEAL Team 7 followed a trail that was too clean. They didn't know it yet, but every footprint they found had been placed. Every lead was a string, and someone was pulling. Time stopped being measured in hours. It became footsteps, breaths, moments when the lights dimmed slightly and came back. Hollow marked it all in his head. Not numbers, patterns. The guards came in pairs. Always 2. Always armed. 1 talked too much. 1 never spoke. The silent one had a limp in his right leg, favoring it just enough to matter. The talker liked to stand closer than necessary, liked to test reactions. Director returned once a day. Not to interrogate. To observe. That was worse. He'd stand near the door, hands behind his back, asking questions that weren't really questions. Do you think your unit has found the valley yet? Do you think command will admit failure? Do you think they'll risk more lives for 2 snipers? Hollow never answered. Mara answered sometimes, but never directly. Depends who's asking, she said once. Director smiled at that. Always sharp. But then came the lie. They brought it on a screen, just like before. This time it showed fire. A burned-out vehicle. Blackened gear. A helmet half buried in sand. A body bag being zipped. Hollow felt his chest lock. Director watched him closely. Your team attempted a recovery, he said calmly. It went poorly. Mara didn't look at the screen. She looked at Director. Zoom out, she said. Director's smile paused. Zoom out, she repeated. If you want us to believe you. A second passed. Then Director laughed softly. You see? This is why I admire you. He gestured, and the image zoomed. Too clean. Too staged. No secondary blast marks. No scrambled tracks. No chaos. Hollow caught it then, the angle of the sun. Wrong time of day. Director saw it too. Saw understanding flicker across Hollow's face. Even if this particular image isn't real, Director said smoothly, others will be. Hollow leaned forward against his restraints. You're bluffing. Director shook his head. I'm patient. Then he did something that told Mara everything she needed to know. He stepped closer. Too close. Within reach, if the restraints weren't there. People who truly understood danger never did that. Director believed the cage was complete. That belief was his mistake. That night, the silent guard made his usual round. He paused outside their room, 1 second longer than normal. His limp dragged just slightly more. Mara noticed. She always noticed. Painkillers, she whispered when the footsteps moved on. He's late on them. Hollow nodded. Which means he'll rush next shift. Mara closed her eyes. Which means he'll cut corners. They didn't speak again for hours. They conserved. When the guards returned with rations, Hollow deliberately knocked the water cup over with his foot, making a small mess. The talker cursed, stepped closer, bent down. Mara watched the angle. Distance. Balance. Habit. Not yet. Later, during another shift, Director didn't come. Instead, alarms sounded faintly in the distance. Far enough to be real, close enough to distract. Hollow smiled without showing it. External incident, he whispered. Mara nodded. They'll pull guards. Minutes later, footsteps ran past the room. Too many. Too fast. The base wasn't under attack. But something had gone wrong. That was when the limp guard entered alone. Alone. He stepped in, irritated, weapon slung low, muttering into his radio. That was the moment. Mara moved first. Not fast, precise. She twisted just enough to put tension on her cuffs, pulled hard, and drove her shoulder into the guard's knee. The weak one. Bone cracked. The guard screamed. Hollow surged forward, wrapping his cuffed hands around the guard's throat, using body weight and leverage, cutting air. The guard dropped. The room exploded into motion. Mara grabbed the dropped weapon, rolled, aimed. She didn't fire. Footsteps were already coming. Too many. They had seconds. Plan B, Hollow snapped. Mara nodded, already moving. She fired once, into the camera. Sparks. Darkness. The lights flickered. Then alarms screamed for real this time. They ran. Outside, the base was chaos. Men shouting. Radios blaring. Orders overlapping. No one expected prisoners to move toward the noise. That was the sniper instinct. Move where others panic away from. They slipped through a maintenance corridor, weapons low, staying invisible in motion. Hollow checked a doorway. Clear. Mara stopped him with a hand. She pointed up. A ventilation shaft. Wide enough. Hollow boosted her without hesitation. She vanished upward, pulling herself through like smoke. He followed. From above, they watched guards rush past below, never looking up. Mara's eyes gleamed in the dim light. Still think they control chaos? She whispered. Hollow shook his head. They never did. They crawled until the shaft opened into a storage room. Inside, crates. Weapons. Explosives. Mara exhaled slowly. They keep everything centralized, she murmured. Because they don't believe in escape. Hollow smiled grimly. Let's correct that belief. They armed themselves quickly, not overloading, not panicking. Mara checked the explosives, her fingers gentle, reverent. 2 charges, she said. Structural. Hollow nodded. We take the base with us. They moved back into the corridors, now hunters again. Outside, thunder rolled. Or maybe that was gunfire. Or helicopters. Mara paused, listening. Then she smiled for the first time since capture. Hollow, she whispered. What? That sound. That's not them. Hollow's heart surged. That's our people. Mara's eyes hardened, not with fear. With focus. Then we make sure there's something left for them to find, she said. She placed the first charge. And the base began to die. The first explosion wasn't loud. It was deep, a low, concussive thump that traveled through concrete and steel before it ever reached the air. The kind of sound you felt in your teeth more than your ears. Hollow counted silently. 1. Mara's second charge followed, timed perfectly, not to amplify, but to unbalance. The ceiling lights flickered. The hum in the walls stuttered, then died. Darkness fell like a held breath released. And in that darkness, The base lost what it depended on most: control. Alarms screamed late, too late, and when they did, they overlapped in ugly dissonance. Doors slammed. Radios barked half orders. Men ran the wrong way because they'd been trained to defend against an external assault, not an internal collapse. Mara and Hollow moved through it like memory. They didn't sprint. Sprinting was for the hunted. They flowed. Through the operations wing first, Mara disabling a console with a single burst, Hollow pulling drives and smashing them under his heel. The enemy had studied them for months. Now the study burned. A squad rounded the corner ahead. Hollow and Mara split without speaking. He dropped low and rolled into shadow. She stepped into a doorway, let the squad pass, then took the last man silently. Hollow caught the body before it hit the floor. They kept moving. In the command room, Director stood frozen over a table of blinking maps. His calm finally cracked. He turned as they entered, eyes wide, disbelief written across his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Mara leveled her rifle. "You shouldn't have kept us together." Director raised his hands. "Not surrender, calculation. You don't understand what you're destroying." Hollow laughed once, short and cold. "We do." Director's gaze flicked between them. "You think this ends tonight?" Mara stepped closer. It already did. She fired, not at him, at the fuel manifold behind him. The room erupted into heat and force. Director was thrown backward as fire chased oxygen. Hollow grabbed Mara and pulled her through the smoke as the command room collapsed inward. They ran. Not away. Through. The last charge detonated beneath the main support column as they reached the exterior exit. The base convulsed, concrete folding like paper, flames punching into the night sky. Behind them, the place that had tried to turn patience into a cage became a crater. They didn't make it far before the night filled with the sound they'd been waiting for. Rotors. Low. Fast. Familiar. Mara dropped to one knee, scanning instinctively, then keyed the emergency beacon they'd salvaged from the base. Short burst, encrypted. A voice cut through the chaos, sharp with relief. "Contact. Contact." Visual on friendlies. SEAL Team 7 came in hot. Birds flaring, doors open, operators already leaning out. Hollow felt his chest tighten, not fear this time. Home. They were hauled aboard under fire from the few remaining enemy fighters scrambling out of the ruins. The team answered with disciplined bursts, shutting it down. As the helicopter lifted, the base collapsed fully, a pillar of fire and smoke marking the end of something ugly. Mara watched it shrink beneath them. "Think they'll rebuild?" Hollow asked. She shook her head. "Not this one." The debriefs were brutal. Longer. Sharper. More honest. Director didn't survive the base collapse, but he didn't need to. The drives Hollow had destroyed weren't the only ones. Enough data survived to unravel networks that had operated in the dark for years. The cost was counted. So were the lives saved. Command didn't call it a miracle. They called it discipline under pressure. They called it initiative. They called it leadership. Mara and Hollow stood side by side as the words were read aloud. Medals placed with ceremony that felt strangely small compared to the silence they'd endured. Afterward, away from the cameras, their commander spoke plainly. "You were hunted," he said, "and you turned the hunt around." Hollow nodded. "We waited." Mara added quietly, "We watched." The commander smiled once. "That's why you're still here." Years later, I tell this story the way it deserves to be told. Not as a tale of torture or suffering, though there was plenty of that, but as a reminder that survival isn't about strength alone, that legends aren't loud, that patience, shared, becomes something sharper than any blade. I've seen men break in cages. I've also seen two snipers turn a prison into a map, and a map into an exit. They didn't escape because someone came for them fast enough. They escaped because they never stopped believing waiting was part of the fight. And when the moment came, they fired. Together. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Epic Recon Stories. Here we tell the missions that never made the headlines, the decisions made in silence, and the people who carried them. More stories are coming soon.